Hey, what's up everybody? It is Kellen here from Start Your Systems, and welcome to a somewhat Flashback Friday video of MX vs. ATV Unleashed. Yes, you guys asked for it, and we are gonna play it. This week with no Supercross going on, and no official track gameplays on MX vs. ATV Supercross Encore, I figured I'd get down and dirty in some MX vs. ATV Unleashed and do some Supercross racing. And I'm not too sure how many of these races I'll do. But let me go ahead and I'll just start out with this one, Tucson. And I'm probably going to do 2 races. The problem is that I'm not going to be able to play with opponents because for whatever reason on PC I'm going to try to fix it, but the sound's kind of all messed up. So there's that. But still going to do some riding on the track. Going to do a little bit of throwback today essentially because boy, oh boy, I remember playing the crap out of this game a while ago, and now playing it again is like super nostalgic, that's for sure. But it really makes you realize how far the games have come, and the fact that we complain on some level about the new, MX vs. ATV game is crazy to think about given where this game was at. And yeah, I know it's not, you know, it's stupid to compare something this old versus something new, but I still thought that this game was like the coolest thing ever when it came out, and like the physics are crazy off, and it's just like it's completely different. I can't even believe it when I play a game like this how much different it really is, to see, you know, the changes in the game over time. And this is we're only 11 years on from when this game was released, but it's still a big change. I feel like graphics wise this actually looks pretty good though. I kind of expected it to be a little bit like fuzzier, blurrier, but on PC we're allowed to expand up to 1600 resolution, I guess, so it looks good, looks cool, and decided to play this game and bring some action for you guys today. But as I said, you know, with no Supercross going on this week, we just had Seattle last week IRL, and a lot of stuff happened, and as you guys know, I usually like to talk about what my thoughts are on Supercross and all that funsy business. And I could have saved it until next week when we do another video on the Salt Lake City Supercross and MX vs. ATV Supercross Encore. But I like to get ideas out there while it's still somewhat fresh, and although this video is going to come out a little bit later in the week, I would like to still talk about Supercross in some aspect. Keep the conversation going, keep you guys up to date on what's happening if you're not following that closely with the series, or if you are, at least be able to have a reasonable conversation with all of you guys out there, because this is about to be one of the best Supercross seasons, at least in recent year. We haven't had a championship, like I've mentioned before, go down to the line since 2011 in that classic 5-rider showdown between Trey Canard, James Stewart, Chad Reed, Ryan Dungey, and Ryan Villapoto. But since then, all the titles have been wrapped up prior to the final round, so kind of nice to see something go to the wire for the change. And this is quite an interesting showdown we've got brewing here. Now the championship tied, 3 rounds to go. The Seattle race was incredibly dramatic, would be the right word for that. Dungey crashing in the first corner, Tomac ending up with a horrible start himself, and you know, it was crazy to watch, honestly. But I don't know, I expected a little bit more out of Dungey at Seattle. I think that he could have gained a lot more, but bad start in the main event does not help when you crash in the first corner, that's for sure. And Tomac and him both rode like animals through the field. Tomac actually going over the bars once, which I predicted, by the way. I felt that there's a race Tomac was going to have a mistake, a big mistake, whatever. I thought Seattle or Salt Lake could be it, and fortunately able to get away with basically going over the bars and nothing really too drastic happening. He went topsy-turvy battling for second with Cooper Webb, cased the double on the far end of the track, and then just kind of augured in. And it was a weird crash, but fortunately the bike wasn't too damaged. He wasn't damaged at all, so he hopped right back up onto his feet. I think every Tomac fan in the world was collectively holding their breath on that one for a second when they saw the replays and stuff, because it was weird because it happened and the crowd went bananas, and it took TV probably 10 seconds to figure out that Tomac had hit the ground, even though they had like 3 cameras on him. And so finally they show Tomac, and it's just as he's getting up, and he'd lost a bunch of time to Webb and Jason Anderson, who he was battling with for the podium spots. But then they showed the replay, and you're like, ooh, that was a little bit bigger than I thought. I thought when I saw where he had crashed, I was like, oh, maybe he just got something wrong in there or something and ended up losing the front wheel, tipping over, something like that. But no, he ended up casing that double and going over the bars. Unfortunately, no damage to the bike, like I said, so he just got up and kept going. Caught and passed Anderson, caught Webb, who then kind of like flubbed up a whole section and then went over the bars. It was kind of a weird thing, but Tomac ending up second behind Musquin. Dungey charging from pretty much second to last because he got up ahead of Bogle in the first corner to fourth. So again, another huge comeback and keeping the championship interesting. I mean, I always thought it'd be a bummer in this championship if either one of those guys crashed, and that would be like the end of the story, if you will, where Tomac crashes, loses a big chunk of points, DNFs a race, and it's over. Or Dungey does the same thing as well. I would like it to stay close. Ideally, I think it'd be great if they went 1-2, 2-1 in the next two races, whatever order. You know, if Dungey wins at Salt Lake and then finishes second at MetLife, or you know, Eli wins at Salt Lake and finishes second at MetLife. As long as they get first and second behind each other in the next two races to stay tied going into Vegas, I think that would be epic. It'd be really great for the series as well, to kind of, you know, prove the point that there can be championships that go to the line. Because for a little bit, Feld was entertaining the idea of a chase format, which I still think might happen anyway. But a chase format, which happens, it started in NASCAR, is like, you know, they have like a 10-race format among their 36-race season at the end of the year. That's essentially the playoffs. And Arena Cross decided that they were going to introduce that logic. And I feel like it's only a matter of time before we see it in Supercross. But this is like maybe one of the last few, you know, championships to go to the line that we may see. And it's between two guys that I think may end up, you know, going down as legends. I think Tomac is going to have a legacy after Dungey retires, and Dungey obviously has a legacy already. 3-time outdoor champion, 3-time Supercross champion, fifth, I think, on the all-time wins list now or something like that. So unquestionably two great riders. And I have stuck with my belief that Dungey is going to win this championship, but I will say that I have no real preference, no, you know, chip in the game, if you will, between either of them. I like both of them. I like that they're both really hard workers and leave it all on the line out there for sure. So as long as the championship goes down to the wire and we have a good race to end the season, if Tomac wins, that's great. If Dungey wins, that's great too. Doesn't make a big difference to me. I'm not trying to, you know, jump on anybody's nuts here, or be favoritism towards anything, because as I mentioned before, I still think it would have been cooler to see Ken Roczen come from Europe and win this Supercross championship this year, but obviously that arm injury ended that hope early on. So the 450 class is very interesting. Drama for days. A week off is like the last thing anybody wanted to see after a race like Seattle, but gonna have to happen with Easter break coming up in the United States, or I mean, for anybody that's basically Christian, Catholic, etc. So, you know, that's how it goes. 250 class, also very interesting. Nice to see Plessinger finally get a win. It seemed like he had been so close to being the fastest guy every week in that class, but would never get a start. Finally, he got a decent start, then they red flagged the race, then he got another decent start, so it was kind of justice in that aspect. But second place for Hill, keeps the championship lead, keeps things nice and tidy on his end. I think he's going to probably win this championship. Barring probably disaster, I think would have to happen in Salt Lake or Vegas for him not to win the championship. But that's kind of cool to see, and it really kind of makes a weird connection here, because Joey Savacci is forced to move up, period. He's already pointed out this year, based on how many points he's earned, if he wins the championship, then that's like just icing on the cake for him. But whether he wins the championship or not, he still has to move up. And if Josh Hill wins the championship, he will also have to move up. If he doesn't win the championship, he doesn't have to, but like I said, I think he's going to win the championship. So basically you have two of Monster Energy / Kawasaki's next big guys, I would say, is what they're banking on. Maybe Adam Cianciarulo is still kind of in the hopes for them, but Savacci or Hill might be the next real kind of breakthrough stars for Monster Energy and Kawasaki. And so I feel as though one of those two guys is going to get Josh Grant's spot next year, and that's no discredit to Grant. I like Grant. He's a really good rider. My best friend, his favorite rider is Josh Grant, so we all like Grant for sure, but I feel like for Kawasaki, for Monster Energy, those guys are going to try to keep those young developing guys growing into something that could be the next Tomac for them. Even though they just re-signed Tomac for a couple more years, I think they're going to go with either Savatgy or Hill next year over Grant. So it's really weird, because then it's like, who would they take then? I don't think they would take both, because I think both would probably request too much money. And so realistically, in my opinion, I think that Kawasaki is going to take Hill, because he might request a little bit less, but he's also probably got a little bit more upside in the 450 class, since he prefers to ride a 450 and has vocally said that. But Savatgy might run and take the money anyway if they can get it at RCH. And I feel like with Microsoft coming aboard the RCH program, that might be an indication that RCH is trying to make another big bid towards getting a top-level guy, which I don't know if that's going to be Savatgy, but it could be, and that might be their selling point to get big sponsors on board for next year, for example. And Savatgy has very close ties with Genie and Ricky Carmichael and the whole Carmichael family, because that's where he trains. So you would think that there's probably talks going on between them, like, hey, you're moving up next year, you don't have a contract, maybe you ride for us, maybe, you know. So very, very interesting dynamic there. Obviously, it remains to be seen, because, you know, perhaps Hill does not win the title this year, and then that just leaves the door wide open again for Savatgy to move up and be on the factory Kawasaki team. But who knows? There's not a whole lot of spots available elsewhere anyway. If Dungey does decide to retire, KTM could take on another guy, but that might be Zach Osborne too, so we never know. Yeah, it's just, you know, Husky seems, pretty set with Anderson being their kind of face of the franchise, if you will, and they, I would guess, would stick with Dean Wilson next year. I don't feel like they're going to just give up on him after a year, after they gifted him the ride from Porcel, essentially. So not a lot of room at Husky. Yamaha is going to have Webb and Reed next year, unless Yamaha decides not to re-up with Chad, but then, again, it kind of leaves the door open of, like, who would you get? Would you move Plessinger up early, essentially? There's not a whole lot of other Yamaha development guys that are really ready to go besides Plessinger, and you could maybe steal away somebody else, but there's, again, not a ton of guys available for that type of a role just yet, so we'll see. And, so that's Yamaha. Kawasaki we've talked about. KTM might have an open door with Dungey out the door. Husqvarna doesn't have a lot of space, and then Suzuki is kind of all over the board anyway, because they have, you know, different teams. They have JGR, they have RCH. There's not really any clear and cut factory team, although RCH did get the support from Yosh, and it is RCH Yoshimura Factory Suzuki, so I guess you could say that. But again, who knows? Like, there's going to be a lot of shuffling going on, and it's kind of interesting to talk about it now, because this is usually when the contracts start to get inked, essentially. Not that I think that Savatgy or Hill or anybody has already signed, but they are probably talking to 450 teams about that, especially Savatgy, who, like I said, is going to have to move up anyway. He has 3 consecutive seasons of 135 points or more. And is going to have to move up. It doesn't matter if he wins the title or not. So Savatgy is already shopping, I'm sure. It's not like he's going to be the PC 450 guy. I mean, I know they've done that before, but I just don't see them doing that again. Very, very interesting stuff. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on what might happen in silly season, or what you think should happen, or who could get a ride in the 450 class, because there's a lot of moving parts to this whole scene, and while a lot of the established 450 guys don't look like they're going anywhere, the new guys coming into the class might warrant some kind of unforeseen changes in that whole dynamic. So going to be interesting. 250 class action still kind of wrapping up, and we'll get into that more going into Salt Lake City next week. But again, just wanted to talk about how crazy that 450 main was at Seattle, and how awesome this title fight will be to the end. I think we should appreciate it while we got it, because it's not every year we get a title fight going to Vegas, and that's pretty cool beans in my opinion. So that's going to do it for another Flashback Friday video in MXRS ATV Unleashed. Nice little throwback, doing a couple Supercross tracks. If you guys like this video, like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next one.